All right. Yeah.
All right. Well, Grand Rising,
Yes.
Shalom, Shalom, greetings. It is a beautiful day. And today, myself, Avraham bin Levi Israel, and Elisabah Baht Israel, Elisabah Baht Ephraim Israel, we're going to have an ethereal life conversation. So I wanted to get this conversation started with a couple of things that will help us understand exactly what we're talking about. So we're going to start off, if you don't mind, with a couple of quick definitions. All right. What does ethereal mean? Well, I went to Google, as most people do. It says something is light, delicate, or refined, or that it seems to come from a place beyond the physical world. It also says here are some definitions of ethereal: celestial or heavenly, something that relates to the regions beyond earth, or that seems to come from them, unworldly or spiritual, lacking material substance, something that is immaterial or intangible, suggesting the heavens or heaven, relating to chemical ether, something that relates to or contains or resembles a chemical ether. So those are the some of the definitions of ethereal. Then I wanted to go down one more. Merriam-Webster's dictionary states, I was pulling up real quick, of or relating to regions beyond the earth. So basically the same thing. I guess they got the definition from Merriam-Webster's. So everything I've already said, it's the same thing it says in Merriam-Webster's dictionary. And then the last thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to turn it over to Elisabah, is ethereal life. And life is going to be in all caps. And it stands for love in full expression. So, ethereal life. I've explained what ethereal is, and I've explained what life is. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elisabah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That was a wonderful introduction and a wonderful definition of what this conversation is all about. And keeping in mind that what what words mean are very important. And, you know, the whole idea of getting to this point where ethereal life is something that is at this stage something that is now considered at this point more than profound, but a reality, more of a reality now in order to think about what we're here on this planet to do and the purpose of our lives. And in thinking about that, the one definition that kind of stood out to me that that you had read was ether, having to do with the ether and the heavenlies. But more importantly, because of the ether, as it's come across my little research that I've done, that ether was once on the periodic table, but it was removed. And it was something that um became of interest to me, or not so much, I didn't delve into it as much, but it was something that kept popping up. And now we're at this point of thinking about ethereal life, things that are in that realm of beyond what we can see in this 3D, and this 3D, three-dimensional realm that we are in, and now realizing and coming to the realization that yes, there are um other realms, and the ether, and the spirit realm, and all of that. All of those things used to be kind of spooky, or taboo to talk about, and now we're at a time now where this is something that is taking, we're realizing that this is a part of life. This is all a part of it. So that's what came to mind in when you were talking about, reading the definitions.
Well, cool. Well, one of the things that I want to put forth in our conversations is that, it's going to be a lot of things covered, and we're going to keep it quantum because, we're recognizing the quantum reality, the quantum mechanics that are at play. And, so we're going to take some time to break that down as well. But in short, we have to recognize that everything is about energy, and energy express themselves, or energy expresses itself through frequencies and vibration. So everything that moves through the ether is going to be represented as energy, and energy is going to be represented by frequencies and by vibration. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how that relates to our daily life, because in reality, in this 3D world that we're living in, it is very little actual physical um, manifestation. I mean, this is mostly air. That's another word for ether. You know, it's mostly space. And it really, when you start talking about quantum, it collapses into physical reality in the mind of the observer. And that's a whole new concept. So when you mention things like, ether, and you mention things like spiritual, a lot of people, like you say, consider it to be uh taboo. And the one thing that this is not going to be, it's not going to be religious. Our conversations are not religious. you know we recognize that, we have made personal decisions to embrace a culture of the Hebrew Israelite, but the conversation is going to be about ethereal life, and it's going to be focused around love, expressions of love, and that we are the individualized expression of source. And that source energy is, all around us, through us. It's everything, and it resides in us as well as around us, and between us. It's all around. So it's spiritual, truly, but we want to say ethereal because we want to be a little bit beyond a religious connotation. We want to really take it into a scientific realm, into the realm of the metaphysical. All of those things we want to touch upon in this conversation. And we would love to hear comments in the comment section, or type comments in the comment section. We're going to, find platforms where we can go live and engage. But we think it's time for this conversation. It's time for us to really embrace this new emerging reality that we're all a part of.
I agree. This is a perfect time to engage in this type of conversation, in this reality, that and embracing it, regardless to what um our previous thoughts or beliefs were about this topic or these, this situation. And again, to, you know, echo the fact that it's not about religion or anything like that, even though, yes, I have um I have identified as a Hebrew Israelite as well. And but that's not to say that in this particular during these particular conversations that that's going to have a bearing on what this conversation is going to be talking about. This is something that is about life. It is encompassing the whole world or the end or the universe. So we, this is something beyond just a particular culture or nation or belief system. So I'm looking forward to having these conversations um, myself because it's an exciting time. It's a very exciting time. So I'm thinking that that's going to be something that uh, we I'm looking forward to it, and I think everyone people are. I think it's time now that people are interested or will be. And if they're not, that's fine. We understand that, but it's an open conversation. So that I definitely am looking forward to.
Okay, okay. Well, I want to open up another part of the conversation because I've become very interested recently in some information that came across in Congress. They were having these hearings about unidentified, aerial, we call them they call them UAPs now.
Right.
Um, Unidentified anomalous something. I don't know. We used to call them UFOs, unidentified flying objects, but they call them something different now, UAPs.
Hmm.
I wanted to get your take on, what do you think about UAPs and extraterrestrials? Because they're saying that these objects that are presenting themselves around military bases and nuclear power plants, and that military aircraft is engaged with these flying objects that are way more agile, faster, and can just kind of like appear and disappear. What are your thoughts about all of this? Because it's coming to the forefront, and when you start having congressional hearings about it,
Hmm.
and the Congress and the military are admitting to the fact that they are dealing with these things, it brings the whole extraterrestrial conversation front and center. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that yes, I definitely think that that is something that is um really paramount right now because before it was always a conspiracy. They were hiding the information. It was Area 51 and things of that nature. And it was a matter of, it was a matter of that whole thing, was all anybody that talked about it or anything else that talked about it in the past, it was something that was like, well, you're, you know, it was taboo basically, and it was something where it was something you just didn't talk about, or if you did talk about it, you were classified as a conspiracy theorist. And now with all of the information that's coming out or the fact that they have to release a lot, they're releasing a lot of classified documents, that it's now one of those situations where okay, we have to let the people know. And basically it just says to me that um for me, they have been here all the time. from what I've been reading or what I've been seeing and listening to, that these beings have been here all the times. These objects have been in our realm. We haven't been able to see them because, of course, uh it's already known fact that we only, with the eyesight that we have now, that we use, we're only seeing 2% of what's really going on in the atmosphere. We can't even see, we don't even have a full range of colors. Like, even if you think about animals that have eyesight that are far superior to ours. So we're just, in certain areas, we're very limited in our abilities to see. But now it's to the point now where it's the time, it's a convergence of time, and there's a lot of talk of the veil being lifted, and the matrix is, the Babylon is falling and everything else like that. So that was what um that's what comes to mind when I think of the congressional hearings. They're getting it from the government level so that they can, they're it's still controlling the narrative, so to speak, but now these are opening up so that hopefully the public will be able to hear and understand. But now Congress is having these hearings talking about it, and they're doing it from to me, letting the information out from a top down type of scenario, as opposed to it just being a part of our everyday life.
Yep, I agree 100%. I think that we are coming into a new age. There's a song that talks about the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and I think it's Fifth Dimension song that came out. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and the thing that I'm recognizing is that it seems to be that full disclosure in every area. I mean, in Hollywood, in politics, on YouTube, on TikTok. I mean, full disclosure is coming out, and it's so many different um various ways for people to get their truth out. It used to be you would get the news from three or four sources. You got ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, blah, blah, blah. And that was kind of allowing them to control the narrative because you were getting the information from three main media sources. Now, there are millions of YouTubers, millions of TikTokers, and they are putting information out. And the younger generation is not bound by old paradigms. They are embracing, brand new paradigms, and they are vocal about it. So, I see that they can't control the narrative as much as they would like to. Even the recent election, right after the election, CNN announced that they were going to let go of a large amount of their staff because their viewership dropped by 40%. So, people didn't watch the news to follow the election. They got their information from other alternative media sources. That's a really, really big thing. I mean, it's showing that the centralized narrative control is weakening, and now a more decentralized system of the dissemination of information has surpassed the old guard. So now we're looking at a brand new way of receiving information. We're looking at a brand new way of people determining who they trust and what kind of information they're willing to receive now, because it's not being centralized and controlled it is being decentralized and disseminated freely. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I absolutely agree about that because for me, the during COVID, what I found that was going on is that there was some major censoring when it came out from when it was coming out, as far as like the information and the narrative was being controlled about about COVID. People asking questions, doctors saying, offering alternatives to combat or fight against the virus. And from there, I really saw where the narrative, the mainstream media, in addition to the censoring, because the mainstream media didn't do the censoring, but they were really controlling the narrative to the point where I even seen a montage video of all of the mainstream media outlets that had their anchor people pretty much speaking from the same script. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, this is amazing. So they're controlling it. They were controlling the media was controlling the narrative across the board so that the national news or the nation was only getting one particular narrative on a particular topic. So with the advent of social media, and people were starting to talk about it that were not necessarily your typical news anchor or anything like that, but people who had enough knowledge and information, and some professionals, a lot of professionals were talking about different things during that particular time. And then that's when I saw the censoring going on. But the word, it showed me that there is a way in which um, information was being spread, that there was the mainstream media, but then there was also the real media, I would say, or underground media that was happening, and people reporting, what they're seeing and what they are experiencing. So yes, that to me is something to see, and to actually now coming up to even this past election, to see the impact of mainstream media, the impact that social media is having on mainstream media. That a 40% drop is huge. Usually and especially for an election as big as this one was, that, you know, that's a huge impact, that's letting the mainstream media know that people aren't really listening to them anymore, or they're considered, now they're truly are seeing the fact that they're being classified, and people are realizing that they're considered fake news and looking to other sources for real news. They want the real truth. Everyone's now is they're seeing now and realizing that people want the truth, and people are looking for it to the point where they don't want to believe the ones that are telling them the lie, that basically, what their narrative is. So yeah, I 100% agree.
And I think it's important that we have this conversation because I truly, know from my own research that there are more and more sightings of these UAPs. There's more and more information coming out about uh different, extraterrestrial beings meeting with heads of state, meeting with different people that are power players in the society. And, there's going to be a big reveal. Don't know exactly when, but I can see them setting, everything up for a big reveal. the question is that going to be a controlled narrative, or is it going to be something that just comes, you know, without the quote unquote mainstream media and government being able to, shape the narrative? Certain things can happen and it's going to hit with people having cell phones and abilities with high end smartphones that they can now capture the video in real time, and it's not going to be censored. It's not going to be edited by the news desk and then put out on the 6 o'clock news. When things happen now, they happen in real time. And so I think the real big thing for us to start to prepare for is to prepare for a new paradigm where we start to really know who these beings are, what these beings want, because I see the government trying to shape a fear narrative. They want to rule by fear. They want to make everyone afraid and create a fear energy when that may not be the right way to approach this. And the best way to overcome fear is with knowledge. See, people are afraid of what they don't understand. People are afraid of, something that they don't have any prior knowledge of. So it's easy for your first reaction to be fear. But if we can help to elevate the consciousness of people, and, first with knowing exactly who we are and why we are important to the new age. There's a dawning of the new age. The Aquarian age is real. The cosmological realities of this universe moving with a certain pattern that is easily read by, looking at the stars and the planetary bodies. You can see cycles. People have been watching the quote unquote heavens for millennia. And a lot of people say, well, we haven't even been here but 7,000 years. Well, that's a false narrative. A lot of people are starting to come and wake up beyond the quote unquote biblical narrative. Now we are, believers in the Torah, and so the biblical narrative is important, but there's information out here that has been removed from the Bible and therefore have left us with only limited and partial information. So, when they start removing books of the Bible, and the Roman Catholic Church, you know, put out a quote unquote version of the scripture. It was a 1619 version of the scripture that came out, and it had things redacted out of it. It had books removed from it, and we have to start looking, into that book more closely and supporting some of the information with external other books that were originally in the original manuscript but got removed and then published by King James, and then it's been distributed all over the world. The Bible is the consistent number one best-selling book in the world, so it has got a big influence. So we're not here to challenge it per se, but we are here to expand upon the information and on the perspective. Because when we start talking about ethereal life, we're talking about things that are usually above and beyond the physical realm. And we're talking about the energy, frequency, and vibration that is forming our physical reality. And, we want to put forth to everyone that love is the power. Love is the energy.
Mhm.
And from that, we can create a much, much better life for everybody involved. If we allow ourselves to fall into the fear mongering trap, it's bad for everybody. But if we can look at everything from a perspective of love and look at everything from a perspective of there is source energy out here that is literally pushing love out into the atmosphere, and we have to combat the fear with love. We have to combat the fear with knowledge, with wisdom, with overstanding of what it is that's coming at us. And when we do that, we'll find ourselves in a much better place. I'm a lot happier when I operate out of a heart of love and not fear. So we wanna basically squash the fear mongering and overcome it with knowledge and overcome it with love and overcome it with acceptance, because those things are going to get us a lot farther than fear.
I agree 100% on that. And that, knowing the history or experiencing the history of the way the news was mainstream media news was actually put out there, or or even in some of the movies or Hollywood, and how they portrayed different aspects of even extraterrestrials or flying objects. It was always from a standpoint of creating fear. Humans were portrayed as the little guy fighting against the war of the worlds kind of thing. And it was always something that um the fear mongering was really something that I really saw a lot of. And it did it does and it does have an effect on people's mindset, and love can only conquer that, and information can only conquer that, overcome the fear. So yes, I totally agree that it has to be, fear has to be, diluted and diminished to nothing, to turning it to love and understanding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's what we are going to promote. And then, this is sort of our inaugural conversation. And I wanted to sort of lay some groundwork as to what the basis of the conversation is, what the basis of, you know, the discovery has been. And it's been a journey. I at some point during the many conversations that we plan to have, I'll kind of give bits and pieces of my testimony as I've traversed this whole situation of seeking truth, because it's been the cornerstone of my existence that I've been seeking truth. And it, that can be a real roller coaster ride, because we get shaped by information that we got as a child, information we got from our parents and our families. And as we, grow older and we start to say, I'm going to challenge some of the traditional narratives. And because it doesn't make sense to me anymore, and therefore I'm going to challenge it. Well, that's easier said than done, because a lot of these things are deeply rooted in our psyche. And when you start to challenge it, it's like somebody snatching the rug from under you. And you just like, wow, I wasn't expecting my whole world to come crumbling down. I didn't realize how I had built my life on these narratives, and some of them were just not true. And when you tear that down, you have to rebuild it from the ground up. And it can be a challenge. And we are going to provide information in our conversations that may challenge some traditional notion. It could be people that are already saying, "Oh, here they go talking about extraterrestrials." But, when we really break it down, we're going to find out that we can be considered the extraterrestrials. There's enough information coming out to say that this planet was seeded by other beings. The entire creation narrative is, now up for debate. And so we're going to talk about it. And the entire situation is so timely because I know that from information that I've been, made aware of, the time is now. Disclosure is happening. 2024, 2025 is going to be, the time of disclosure, and we're going to have to deal with it. We've gotten through 2019 and 2020 and all the way up from the COVID scenario. The world has changed dramatically, and there've been attempts to try to, you know, immunize or vaccinate people with things that will disconnect us from the divine. But we're fighting every day, and we're going to put information out that let people know. Fight for your humanity. Your humanity is a very powerful thing. Don't let anyone take your humanity from you. You know, we all love technology. We're all familiar with AI. We're all familiar with different uh, advances and advancements that are happening, but we can't lose sight that we are the greatest creation ever created in this realm. And even though technology is wonderful, it doesn't surpass what we have the organic ability to do when we elevate our consciousness and elevate our frequency. There's nothing that we can't do. There's nothing that we can't be. We just have to fix it in our minds and then elevate our consciousness to actually walk in it. And so, this is the beginning of many, many conversations, and we're going to cover many, many things. And when we get our YouTube channel up and running and we start posting shorts and we start posting TikToks, and we're going to be looking forward to the people out there, the listening audience, to give us feedback, ask us questions, and let's have a engaging conversation about what we are facing. I was about to say what we're about to face, but we are facing some very serious situations right now. And it could be very, very good for us. It could be very, very bad for us. The choice is ours. We choose life. We choose love and full expression. We choose positivity over negativity. And so we want to give knowledge, we want to give information so that people can make informed decisions about the things that they're about to see. Because the things you're about to see are going to shock some people. But if you have a little bit of a heads up, you might be able to deal with it a little bit better. What do you think, Elisabah?
I agree. I agree that because we are in the midst of it. Everyone can feel, or for the most part, I feel as though most people have been feeling that there's something going on, and they also have been witnessing that there's a lot of things that are going on that are not your typical day to day um information type things. A lot of you know, the way things are coming across, just as it's in the air. Everything, the change is in the air. And yes, I totally agree.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, when it comes to the topics and the subject matters, we're going to post or talk about a lot of different things over a course of time. And so we'll give you a heads up of what the next topic is going to be. And, we'll probably even have a format where we have I don't want to call it table of contents, but just at least some kind of a list of topics that we will explore. And then, it give people a chance to know in advance and then prepare a question or a comment and then engage with us as we explore. This is a channel for discovery. We're not coming on to tell you that we figured it out. We're not coming on to tell you that it's got to be one way or another. We're basically coming on to have a discussion about the things that have been brought to our attention and then give people a chance to comment on it and interact with us as we explore. So this is a channel for exploration and discovery, and we're inviting you to explore and discover with us.
Yes, I agree. Their comments are absolutely welcome. Their experiences are absolutely welcome. So definitely. Okay. Well, I think that this has been a great um, moment and time to actually introduce Ethereal Life um, Conversations, and we are definitely looking forward to um, hosting and having more of these conversations with you as well. Thank you, Ambassador Abraham. It has been a pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine, my beloved sister, and we're going to keep it going. We're just getting started. It was something that we were both inspired to do, and so we just said we're going to get up this morning. Actually, we actually started talking about it last evening, and we didn't actually start, but the very first thing this morning you said, "Hey, let's go on Zoom and let's start talking about it." So I applaud the fact that you didn't allow any time to pass by. We jumped right on it and we were in it, and it has begun. There's no turning back now. So thank you, and thank everybody or anybody who gets a chance to listen and hear what we're discussing. And we encourage you to join the conversation. Shalom.
Shalom.